Hello and welcome at Book Lovers Companion. My name is Edith and right next to me is my lovely co-host, the Chattering Teacup.
Hello.
And from the land of enchantment, our guest, Paul DeBlassie. Hello and welcome at Book Lovers Companion.
Well, good morning to you from New Mexico and good evening to you there in Vienna, to both of you.
Thank you, and hello and welcome and good morning and good evening to you as well. We are here because you are a writer so far. 3 books have been published.
Yes, 3 books in metaphysical fiction, metaphysical thrillers. Before I've been a writer since 1985, writing professionally, and recently, in the last 10 years, been publishing in metaphysical fiction.
The first one was The Unholy. Then we have The Goddess of the Wild Thing. And now, last year, in February 2021, you've published Goddess of Everything.
Yes, that's right. The Unholy, Goddess of the Wild Thing, and Goddess of Everything, each taking on separate themes. The Unholy, the dark side of religion, Goddess of the Wild Thing, and it's about love and whether bad love is better than no love at all. Also metaphysically based, and also having undercurrents of the dark side of religion and then how that affects our ability to love. And then the Goddess of Everything, about a young man's struggle to love and a mother's devouring love and the struggle to break free.
And also you mentioned it before, it's also heavily, religion is heavily involved in this book.
Religion is heavily involved. I'm a specialist in psychology and spirituality. And in the past 30 years, I've been in private practice as a psychotherapist for 40 years. In the past 30 years, my practice has evolved to be a trauma-based practice. So I'm a trauma specialist. I treat the unconscious mind of individuals who suffered trauma, especially from those from religious backgrounds. So each of my novels is informed by having been touched by the dark side of religion, meaning that issues of guilt, fear are primary and have deeply scarred the individual in their capacity to be good and loving human beings and realize that there are now decisions to be made with the hand that they've been dealt as a result of religion and the dark side of religion.
As you say, religion, do the organized religions work with fear, or is it a byproduct?
Well, organized religions, they're so... I've worked with individuals across the scope of many religions, East and West, primarily being Western organized religion. And what we find in the initial development of religion, many times, any organized religion that I'm aware of, is an original inspiration that was very true. And then what happens is that from there, quite often, there develop issues of power, control, structure, dogma that are then imposed on the lives of human beings rather than something helping us to be free and to think for ourselves and to live freely, and being informed by spirituality, we'll say, by the original spiritual inspiration to live and to be good human beings. Instead, we're then caught by dogmas that thwart us, and fear and guilt are very much at work at that in that way. And in each of these novels, the lives of individuals hang in the balance. Their ability to love and be loved and to live at points. They wonder whether life is even worth it. I've treated so many individuals abused within a religious context that simply these people do not want to live any longer.
And
they felt so violated.
And is it also a question of power? Because when I think of organized religion, and in this case, the Catholic Church, it's also about absolute power, which corrupts absolutely.
Yes, it does. It absolutely does. Well, you have to, if we stop and consider for a moment that we'll take Catholicism. Every religion is different. Eastern, very different than Western. But Western religions, especially within Catholicism, where you're looking at the clergy as the priest is a representative of Christ on earth.
Yeah.
This is God incarnate, essentially. I'm being strong, perhaps hyperbolic.
No, you are completely right. I mean, we were also brought up Catholic. I mean, the majority of the people in Austria are Catholics still.
But not very strong believers.
Not very devout and not very strong believers. Not anymore. But we were brought up in this faith. So
yes, that's what I found in my travels through Europe. I've seen that particularly strong in Ireland, where the abuse has been so prevalent. But yes, it's an issue of power and male power and domination of males and females, women as at the very least being treated as second-class citizens. And I'm being kind in saying that. If you read the Unholy, the first of the novels, which I thought would have been my most shocking of the three, there's just this utter degradation of women, and one woman, the young woman, needing to find her way to free herself in the midst of a culture that refuses to see that what is being done is not only oppressive, it is rapacious, especially to women, and psychically, emotionally, and spiritually. And then the third novel actually has caused the most uproar, Goddess of Everything. It's caused the most uproar. The Amazon reviews have repeatedly said, be careful, this is a very thrilling, chilling, horrifying, and the reviewers have said well written, so I'm grateful for that. I hope that's the case.
Yes, it is.
But it's loaded with triggers,
Okay.
and that's what the reviewers have pretty consistently said.
Okay.
So, and that's good to know for the readers if you feel that hearing of and reading about the dramatization of religion gone bad, especially where the perpetrator, different from the Unholy, the perpetrator is a male. In Goddess of Everything, it's a female. It's a mother superior of the order.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Jacob, it's a creepy nun. I have to say, although we were raised Catholic, I have never met a creepy nun.
Never met a nun.
Yeah, I have, but they weren't creepy, so.
In reality, there have been similar cases, as we found out in the last few years. So it's not complete fiction.
Oh.
No, especially in Ireland, we see, the nunneries, the convents that were taking care of children, much like Goddess of Everything, and what happened to those children under the auspices of the Mother Superior.
Yes, but isn't the Catholic faith for her just a vehicle?
Well, isn't that in many ways that's the point, right?
Yeah. True. Indeed, it is. But more so for her because I also is it good or is it allowed to say I liked her view of the let's say the male-dominated part of the church?
Oh yes, I think so. I have to agree with you, Edith. I liked her view too. I could see her perspective. She was quite assertive and powerful when it came to dealing with clerics who thought that they were the next best thing to God. In fact, perhaps they were the Almighty himself. Hers was to set the matter straight in a not altogether humane way.
Yeah, that's true. But that what makes the thriller part. I mean, also like you said, the supernatural part or metaphysical part as well. And I'm wondering, because I may be completely wrong in this case, but her name, Juana de la Cruz, it reminded me a little bit of another nun known in Mexico for her assertiveness, her interest in art, science. Sor Juana,
yes. This would be a dark Sor Juana.
Indeed. Dark. I did get it right then a little bit.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, of course. Because in depth psychology, one of the things that we see is, and within each of us as human beings, not only for individuals who have suffered trauma as in The Goddess of Everything, Mother Juana, who was the quite wicked perpetrator, was also the victim of violence and abuse herself.
Yeah.
So individuals who have great capacity for light also have great capacity for darkness. And it just depends on which is fed in one's life.
And when or how do we really decide which way to go?
How do we really decide? That's the question. I find that in working with patients, and we can see this in our own lives, perhaps if it's so hard in our own lives because it's so difficult to see the forest for the trees, but in 40 years of working with patients and those who have struggled for a while, then went another direction, that it's not one decision, but it's a series of decisions that are made. And then finally, they seem to move from being human beings with a capacity for empathy and the engaging the struggle to be a good and decent person, to being a person who's outright wielding power and has no concern except for their own power needs. It's a series of decisions that lead up to that. And so where and when, probably a series of wherens and whens,
Can it also be that people sometimes feel powerless and because of that, they don't see the possibilities they have to change and make small wrong decisions because they're, I suppose, powerless?
Yeah, could you tell me a little more, your perspective there?
Someone is in a situation, they would like to change, but they feel they don't have the possibility to do it because everything else is more or less working against them. And the decisions they make are just the wrong ones, and the situation gets worse just because they think they can't do anything.
Yes, of course. Many situations like that come to mind, teacup. We see this, of course, in the horrors of Nazi Germany and in the concentration camps where some of the individuals in the camps actually began to identify with the abuser. They saw no way out at all. So their only recourse in their mind was to become like the Nazis. And Jews started treating Jews like as though they were their Nazi captors. And there's an identification with the abuser. In the case of Mother Juana de la Cruz, we could assume that she saw no other way within organized religion and the darkness inherent within male patriarchy than to become more powerful, bigger, stronger than the male clerics who dominated the scene. And she indeed did.
Also because she doesn't want to become a victim again?
Oh, definitely. She does not want it. It empowers her. But it's a collusion with dark energies, dark spiritual forces. In trauma work, we see dreams being highly activated with patients, and I activate this within the context of storytelling. And what happens is that good energies, bad energies, in dream material, the symbolism is quite powerful of evil and good, decisions needing to be made. And there is something that in depth psychology we refer to as the dark side of the archetype. And that energy can be accessed as a power base, and an individual can give themselves fully over to that. They can. We see this in politics, where a certain type of politician that we see many of these politicians can be very charming, persuasive to a certain group of people within the political scene. I write about religious scenes, but within the political scene, well, it's actually politics too, because it's the politics of religion. And they give themselves over to the dark side of the archetype, and they're possessed. It's commonly that person is possessed. They're berserk. But they have followers.
Politics and religion, in both cases, it's about power.
Yeah.
I mean, they go about it in a different way, but it's the same goal, I think.
Yeah.
It's the same goal. It is the same goal. And just parenthetically, in the novel I'm writing now, it looks like it's going to be a series, Seer, and it's based on Algernon Blackwood, who's been a favorite writer of mine. He's a Gothic writer, and he has the John Silence stories, Dr. John Silence, and he goes through his cases. He's a metaphysical doctor. Algernon Blackwood calls him a psychical detective, but he's a doctor who treats psychic illness. So my novels were inspired by that, this new series. And the newest one is called Seer, the case of the man who lost his soul. And it's not dealing so much with traditional organized religion as New Age religion, a New Age orthodoxy that has developed in Santa Fe. And Santa Fe is a big hub for the New Age movement. So we see power structures immediately developing, even with newer developments in spirituality.
Okay. And would you also agree that there's a certain type of personality which is more attracted to this kind of powers, like, say, religious power or political power?
Or to strong figures making decisions.
Well, yes, I think both of those are interesting, because when there's an attraction, first of all, to a strong figure, quite often that we could surmise, and as a psychologist, I've seen that it is true, there is a need for a strong figure to follow quite blindly, even, as long as that figure is strong and takes the place of what is a developmental lack in the person's psychological history. The father or the mother was not present, or the rather than father or mother, there was a lack of strong nurturing parenting. Okay, because traditional models of father and mother don't necessarily hold up anymore. It's the child needs parenting, nurturance, firmness. If not, they'll constantly look for that parent throughout their life in terms of a strong figure. Then if their inclinations are more towards spirituality, they may choose religion to find that figure. If their inclinations are not spiritual at all, they'll look for it somewhere. And politics is just a hotbed of groupiness. It's one big clique, and it has its leaders, and people can rivet on a leader and follow them blindly. They become the parent that they never had.
Yeah, but also those who usurp this power. I mean, the one in charge. Yeah. Does this also acquire a certain kind of personality to want to be on top?
Yes. Oh, that is a very good point, Edith. The one who needs to be on top is always the one who feels most at the bottom. It comes from that need, that compulsion to be on top, comes from a disabling sense of inadequacy that is being compensated for. So they feel like nothing, so they become everything.
Yeah.
Isn't that what I often say?
Yes, indeed you do, D-Cup. Indeed you do. Yes.
Could one simplistically say that someone who knows who they are doesn't have the special need to gain so much power?
Right, exactly. In fact, would be reluctant. This is the reluctant leader that's so effective. I don't know enough about him. Perhaps it was Zelensky, who never viewed himself in this position and now has had to stand up and take. I don't know enough about him, but certainly he has been admired for coming to the fore in time of incredible need for his country. But yes, I think the most effective leaders quite often are the ones who find themselves thrust into that position, not out of choice, but out of the need of the people for help.
May I also ask about the part of the past of Mexico's, or New Mexico's past, because we spoke about the influence of the Catholic religion, and there's also a strong part in your book about the indigenous myth, how they influence certain parts in your book, and how Mother Juana wields her power.
How much influence is there in this regard from Mexico in New Mexico?
Ah, yeah.
In New Mexico, New Mexico is my lineage in New Mexico. Paternally, the Italians came from Naples in 1880.
Mm-hmm.
So the paternal lineage has been here for that long. The maternal lineage goes back maybe a few thousand years. My grandmother was a Native American, a Saleta Indian.
Mm-hmm.
And then also the Spanish influences there. So we are native New Mexicans are mestizos, they're mixed bloods. So we have European heritage as well as native heritage. And all of that comes into play in each of my novels. So we have the mixing within Goddess of Everything of the colonization of Catholicism into a culture that had its own spirituality, very inherent. Spirituality to the Native Americans was not an organized religion.
Yeah.
It was a way of life. Okay, it was a way of dealing with one's relationship to others and to nature. And so it was an integral part of life, but it wasn't a codified religion. Catholicism then colonized it. And to this day, you'll see in native cultures, with those in the pueblos, there's a Catholic Church, but also there's the respect for their own native traditions, and that's tolerated by the church. Not tolerated; it's even encouraged now. Whereas in the past, they were killed for it. So here you have in each of the stories now with Goddess of Everything, an amalgam of nature-based beliefs and the workings of the supernatural understood and taken as commonplace practically. The understanding that there is a world of spirits and that works regardless of religion. And religion, as Teacup mentioned, is only, I think it was you, Teacup, that mentioned it was used as a vehicle, because what was really at work is spiritual influence, which was they were raised with. It's part of their everyday life, the world of spirits, nature, good, evil. There are witches, and in the native culture there are witches. Yeah. And there are healers. And the witches, by and large, the powerful witches are female. Oh. They're all female. Practically. There are some male, but they're, in my opinion, they're sort of hobbling along compared to the female. The females are the ones that are very psychic, very intuitive, and quite often, as with Mother Juana, come from a disturbed past.
Yeah, you just mentioned the female witches are more powerful than, let's say, the sorcerers or wizards. How strong is the role of the women in the Mexican or New Mexican culture? Because I once saw a documentary about I think it was a village in Mexico where the women held all the power. They had the money, they made the decisions, and so on. I can't remember where exactly, but is it different then, culture-wise, in the Mexican culture? Or was it different? Did it change because of the influence of the Catholic Church?
The people you're talking about, were the indigenous people or indigenous?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
You're asking such wonderful questions, such charged, emotionally questions. It's all a matriarchy. The women, it is a matriarchy. It is a culture that is birthed by and nourished by and controlled by women. Now, what's fascinating with that is the macho dynamic, where males think that they're the ones that are, and they're strutting around. In actuality, they're mama's boys. And it's the control is really matriarchal, and it really is the mothers have the primary influence, even in New Mexican culture, even in Mexican culture as well, and in in native Indian culture, and even in religion. There's God the Father, but I'll tell you who rules is the Virgin Mary.
Yes, indeed.
You get in New Mexico culture, and it's Our Lady of Guadalupe. So you have, again, a mother complex at work here, the undergirding. Parenthetically, the New Yorker had a wonderful article on the erosion of the mafia in Calabria. Okay. And the Calabrian mafia are some of the most vicious, even more vicious than the Neapolitan and Sicilian. The Calabrian mafia is being eroded because of the women. And they made it was a wonderful article, very long article, but what they said is the women got tired of allowing the men so much latitude because they were relegated to the background when they were the power literally behind the throne. So they were seeing that things were never going to change unless they changed it. And what was happening is that they through their times of talking together over a couple of generations, just 2 or 3 generations, and the shift has been noted, they decided to change things up. Yeah. And they didn't have anything to do with the inner circle of the good old boys mafiosi, yeah. But they had direct access to something that the good old boys didn't. That is the raising of the children. Yeah. They began to indoctrinate the children with regard to the importance of being good people and to questioning and to being their own individuals, which went against the children began to decide not to join the mafia.
So sorry, I have to pause because the church bells are ringing.
And it's fitting.
Very fitting, but it's very loud. We're living right across from the church, so I'm sorry about that.
Oh, I can't hear anything here.
Yeah, but our microphones will pick it up eventually. I'm afraid. Okay. So
the books are dramatizations of the light and dark within every individual, and we have extremes played out because it's dramatic fiction.
About the women and the power they wield, I mean, come to think of the Catholic Church, I mean, when I think of the villages here in Austria, I mean, without the women attending church, taking care of the church,
cleaning and so on, decorating,
there wouldn't be anyone else. Who would be there?
That's the same here in New Mexico, same in other places I've seen in Europe. Yep. Sure.
Regarding the things you said about the mafia, I mean, while the men were strutting around and doing their business, the women decided to change things. And when at the point the men maybe realized what's happening, it was too late because they were playing the long game, wasn't it?
That's right. So very powerful position the mothers have.
Oh, yeah, indeed.
Being a bit clandestine because the others are the bosses, they think they're above anything else and they might not see the danger.
They don't see the danger, right? They're all powerful, right? Well, and there's another thing there was a variable they didn't consider.
Oh, yes, indeed. You said playing the long game. Isn't that what women usually do?
Yes. But unfortunately, us men are short-sighted. And don't catch on very quickly, or perhaps some men are. I'll say
because in your book, I mean, Gabriel is the son of Mother Juana, her biological son. His wife also sees right through his mother, right from the beginning.
Right. She sees right, and she loves Gabriel, but Gabriel fights her. This cannot be the case. This is my mother. She loves me. And of course, Gabrielle, part of the story and goddess of everything is that the mother was such a dominant figure for him growing up. And he had lost his father, so he was completely dependent on her. And you see this with children, of course, where you can actually have a bad parent that a child then reconstructs in their mind as good. And that happens so that the child can then feel safe in the world.
Yeah.
And Gabriel, even as an adult man in his early 30s, still had that illusion of the all good mother, and his wife could see the truth, but there was no way to get through to him until he had gone through enough, and then he saw for himself. And she was a very loving person and never said, "I told you so." But
yeah, exactly. And she wasn't bad mouthing his mother because she knew it
No.
wouldn't work.
It would backfire on her.
Yeah, exactly.
And she had too much integrity for that.
Yeah. I mean, his friend and mentor, he also told him it's necessary for him to make decisions. Decisions make a man.
Yes, they make a human being, of course, for all of us, the decisions. But here, what was hanging in the balance is his sense of being a man.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean to be a man? And women go through the same thing, of course. What does it mean to be a woman for myself, for the world, relationship? What does it mean to be a man? And to him, it was integral to his way of thinking that he was devoted to his mother. The whole world, the whole regional world, that the whole area of the Southwest venerated his mother. She was a miracle worker. She helped scores of children, and then we find out what's going on behind the scenes. And you know, he to be fair to Gabriel, he didn't know about all of this, but there were enough signs he could have seen through.
Yeah.
Is it that because she's a mother superior, that people in certain positions, they get from the population, they get more trusted and respected, and so it's easier for them to do certain things than if they were a regular person?
Oh, sure. There's especially with religion. I was thinking of our dichotomy between religion and politics. With politics, it's almost the opposite. You know, the attitude. I'm not sure how it is for you in Vienna, but here it's, you know, there is no good politician. There are only tolerable politicians.
Yes.
You know, within religion, it's almost the opposite, or at least has been. You know, there's automatic trust in the clergy. There's automatic trust in the priest, automatic trust in the sister, in the nun, because they are, in a sense, representatives of God, or in fact, within Catholicism, are representatives of God. So there's enormous power built in. You are giving immediate and total trust and entrusting them and their teachings and what they say. And here it was, not only was she Mother Superior, but she was his mother. So the mother complex itself, where he had reconstructed her in his mind as a little boy to be all good and all loving, very dominant woman who wielded that attitude and that force from childhood in him, and that's very hard. Saint Ignatius of Loyola, which both of you, are
Jesuits,
Jesuits. He said, "Give me a child from birth to age 7, and you'll have a Catholic for life." Okay. So that indoctrination goes in early, and to undo that is very, very difficult. So he had to undo the thought that his mother could be not just his mother, but a woman revered as a saint, could be anything but pure good.
Yeah, but isn't it also true? Sorry, isn't it also true? I mean, in a political way, or when we think of children who were recruited as soldiers, child soldiers,
when they're indoctrinated at an early age, absolutely true. The political indoctrination is very powerful. We visited Berlin. We were on the east side a few years back. And we talked to people, older people, you know, older than us, who were raised under the communist regime, and they said they liked it. And there was a complete giving of self over to the political indoctrination of it. And we talked to them about pros and cons. Very smart people, very smart. and they had their point of view, and they did not like the new system.
I guess that's the reason why, doesn't matter which kind of regime, starts young. The younger, the better.
That's right. The younger, the better. They were born into it.
Yeah.
And so they didn't see, I mean, they would not be, their ideas, they weren't interested in changing. It was working for them, and it had been there since childhood. And there was no, in psychology, we speak about ego dissonance, something that just feels right for me. There was no dissonance for me. They were egocentric. They felt it was all right. There was no conflict. And so they would continue. So in the church, even though it is a power-ridden church, you see this today, where people refuse to see the dark side of religion. And because they were raised to feel that all of religion is good and the church is all-knowing and all good. And when the Pope speaks ex cathedra, that is the voice of God, and there can be no mistakes. And it's like, okay, we need to rethink this now.
But I think it's also easier to go along than to question it.
It's a little easier to go along than to question.
Go along with what they're told and what the regime tells them, than to question it and maybe doubt yourself or your own opinions and what you always believed.
Oh, yes. There's looking at religion. Another author. I'll promo his book here for just a moment, because he addresses religion. Dan Silva, in his book The Order. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but he addresses. Dan Silva is a wonderful thriller writer, but he always addresses a historically correct situation, and then extrapolates on facts, and then moves into a story. And this takes place in the Vatican. And it is a thriller, and regarding the church's behind the scenes, the church's collusion with vis-a-vis Pius XII with Hitler, and all the damage that was inflicted as the result of that. And so you have individuals here who just don't want to believe, don't want to see, but behind the scenes, this is at work. You see this in the Netflix Thriller, which is an Italian thriller taking place in Rome, Subaru. And it's taking place, the mafia boss of Rome says, there are three powers in Rome. He said, politics, sex, and religion.
Isn't it true in a lot of cities?
Yes, it is. And the power and the intrigue there in Subuta is that of religion wielding power alongside the mafia, and actual facts, including the Vatican bank scandal. So you see you may have seen the God. We're speaking of.
Even when you think of the name of the Vatican Bank.
Isn't it against their own rules in some way?
Maybe, true.
You would think. Did you see The Godfather? Godfather 3?
Actually, no, not yet.
Not yet.
I know I should.
There's a marvelous scene where Al Pacino is the Godfather.
Yeah.
He's gone up the ranks, becomes a Godfather. And it's at the time of the Vatican bank scandal. And the mafia, it was reputed to have been right, and including the American mafia in the Vatican bank scandal. And so Al Pacino is a faithful New York mafiosi. He is the boss. And he's been pulled in and shocked at what he finds out about the church. And so he goes to Sicily to visit the old Godfather, and he says, is there no one with any integrity within the church? And because he's shocked at what he finds out with regard to the money wielding and dealing. And the old man says, there is one cardinal. Go to him and he'll tell you what to do. And so there's a beautiful scene of Pacino and the old cardinal in the Palazzo. And there it's an inner courtyard, and there's this and Pacino asks the cardinal, what can I do? How can this be? Because the cardinal tells him what's happening with the Vatican Bank and the money, and how the president of the bank hung himself over the Tiber River.
Yeah.
And the cardinal says, tells Pacino, he says, go to the fountain there. That fountain is 500 years old. He said, it has had water flowing through it for 500 years, and pick out a large stone.
Mm-hmm.
And Pacino goes and gets a hand-sized stone, and he says, now get this stone and smash it against the walkway here. And Pacino smashes it. He said, now bring it to me. And he says, what do you see? He says, I see a smashed stone. He says, no. He said, the outside is wet, the inside is dry. He said, so it is here in Rome and the Vatican. We are surrounded by the teachings of Christ, but nothing has reached us. Power. And power corrupts.
It does. And like you mentioned about Rome and politics and sex and religion, and I had to think about the time when the Pope had to leave Rome and go to France because he had to move. And there was this saying about the city he moved to. There was one whorehouse, and when they left, the whole city was a whorehouse. So.
There you go. There you go. That's right. There you go. Yes, it's that's true. That's true. I'm reading the. Are you familiar with Giordano Bruno?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I began to read him, and then my wife and I traveled to Prague. And we were staying at this boutique hotel, and we went into our hotel suite. And we saw that this was a Giordano Bruno suite. And this is where he stayed in actuality before the Inquisition caught up with him. And then he was killed in Rome. But he was at the University of Naples, and I'm reading a thriller series about Giordano Bruno and the University of Naples as having been at one point the literary hub and philosophical hub of Europe. And that was Thomas Aquinas taught there, and leading intellectuals taught there. But of central note is that the monasteries, the Dominican monasteries, and the clerics frequented in the late hours of night, the bars and the ladies of the night. And that was just commonplace.
Yeah.
Nothing was out of it.
Very true. I can believe that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, there was nothing in your book which was very shocking to me.
I
mean,
that's good.
I enjoyed it.
Good.
I enjoyed reading it because I also enjoyed the fact of being in people's heads. There's a lot of being in people's heads as a reader. I enjoyed that. And like I said, I wasn't put off by it. I'm not squeamish. She's a bit squeamish. I'm not that squeamish.
Oh, boy.
But I think when you read something and it's a bit too much for you, because whatever the reason, you can always take a break or skim a bit over the next few lines and so on, and then read on where it's okay for you to read. It's no reason to put it away completely.
No, and you didn't kill a dog, so
yeah,
that's okay.
Humans are okay-ish.
never kill an animal. That's the rule for every crime fiction writer, usually. And may I also ask you, Paul, about your advice for any other writer, no matter the genre? What would be your advice?
For any other writer, new writers? Aspiring
authors, for example.
Aspiring authors. I always tell aspiring authors, I've been in the writing business since 1985, and I found that if you feel it, write it and stay with it. A good colleague of mine, Michael Eigen in New York, professor of psychoanalysis and mysticism at New York University, has written more books than Freud, literally at this point. And I'm in a weekly study group with Mike. And he said, if you just keep writing, you get better. And you find that there are people who want to read what you have to say. You have more experiences, you have input, your writing grows, changes, and just keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I tell writers. If you feel it, just keep doing it.
And only just stuck to what you know?
I would say to stay with what you feel,
Mm-hmm.
and always be growing. I don't ever approach my stories in a formulaic way. I do write dramatic thrillers because I enjoy reading them, and I think that life is a dramatic thrill ride. So I go with what I feel. Right now, for instance, if somebody came to me with a book contract for a political thriller and would say, Paul, I think it would be growthful for you to expand outside the realm of spirituality and religion and psychology. Write a political thriller. I don't have it in me. I don't feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe at some point, but I don't feel it. So I have to feel it. And then there are so many realms of experience with what I do know and what I do feel to explore. And hopefully that will resonate with some people and some readers, and they'll find it helpful, enjoyable, and maybe even satisfying.
May I also ask about the structure of your book? Because I said it was quite surprising that at the beginning you have those long chapters, and coming towards the end, your chapters are shorter. And writing shorter chapters, we agree on that, Think Teacup, makes for a faster pace.
Yes.
Is that why you did it, to make it faster, to move it along faster, the story, the plot?
So was it intentional, the shorter chapters, or just the way it developed?
You know, I wish I could. I really wish I could tell you everything was intentional. What I can assure you, and my family is a family of artists and writers, and we all are. We have 3 artists, 3 writers, 3 visual artists, 3 writers. And they say, Dad, my daughters say, Dad, I always remember you say you get up every day and hit the page running. Okay. Which means I see what comes. And what happens is that inevitably about midpoint in the novel, things start picking up steam more and more. The background has been set. The characters have been fleshed out. And then the action starts getting more and more intense. And you feel it. The chapters are shorter and things are moving more quick. And it's out of my control. The train is going down the track and I'm going to see where it's going to.
You sit back and
just record.
Right. That's right.
And Paul, may I also ask you about your future plans? What's next? I mean, you've touched a little bit upon that, but can you elaborate for our listeners a little bit?
Yes, at this point, I'm moving away from organized religion into other facets of spirituality. I have what seems to be, it's emerging as a series called Seer. And it's about the work of Dr. Ernesto de la Tierra. He's a transpersonal psychologist. He's a metaphysical psychologist in Santa Fe, and he's going to go through his cases. And the first book is Seer, the case of the man who lost his soul. Okay. And it's looking at not organized religion, but about New Age movement and various spiritualities associated with it, and how darkness slowly begins to infiltrate, and the hazards and the critical realization that the human soul can be lost. And then the question posed, can it be found? Can it be retrieved? And this is also a thriller. And he's working with his patient, and it's a realm of dreams, supernatural intrigue, and what seems like, and of course, I always have to see where the train ends up, as I say, going to be a rather startling conclusion.
Sounds intriguing. I forgot to ask you that. I had it on my paper here. Do dreams play a larger role in the indigenous myth than it usually does in our world, in our Western world?
Dreams are natural. I believe they're natural for all of us as human beings. And the more we pay attention to them, the more they'll speak to us. It's as though the unconscious mind says, oh, you know, I'm here and I'm willing to speak to you and help you. Then good, let's get on with things. And I will. In the native culture, that's taken for granted and that's assumed. For us as more acculturated cultures, we have to learn that. And that may be a propensity and inclination that we have. Dreams have always intrigued me. Or other people say, oh, forget it. It's just about what I ate for dinner that night. And you'll never convince them otherwise. And I respect those people because what's interesting is even with these people, they'll say, you know, the guy at the bar joking with his beer, or the woman, just saying the same thing after she's had her shot of whiskey, you know, she's saying, but I do remember this one dream. And there's always an influential dream or two or three that they've had in their life that once the door is open, they begin to say, they said, you know, I never forgot that dream. And then you look at how their life has evolved. I just do a snapshot and I say, and that I didn't tell them that dream influenced you and where you're at right now. So the dream world will influence us whether we're conscious of it or not. It's best and most helpful if we are conscious of it and the workings of it, because then we can cooperate and we yield to the workings of nature rather than fighting so hard against it and becoming neurotic. There's hope. There's hope. And
I would say there's always hope.
There's always hope. And when we understand dreams, as we see in each of the novels, Goddess of Everything, replete with dreams. When we understand dreams, the psychologist William James always stated that when there is psychological understanding, there is always hope. We are never left in a position of despair. So when we have the understanding of a dream, when we understand what a dream says, it's very simple, actually. There's always a message of hope. If you do this, then this. So if the outcome is bad, if you do this, then the outcome is bad. That's hopeful, isn't it? Because it's giving us a choice. Or if it's saying, if you go this way, then this, and it will be good. That's hopeful, obviously.
Yeah, it is. And Paul, is there anything else you would like our listeners to know? Anything else you would like to share?
Well, I would like to share that this has been a wonderful experience being with the both of you. You're both very engaging and very warm, and there's an easy flow to our conversation, and your sincerity is obvious to me.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure meeting you. It was a pleasure talking to you.
And for me as well, it was very much a pleasure. Thank you.
You did enjoy this episode as much as we did? Then hit subscribe and don't miss the next episode. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. If you like to support us and buy us a coffee, you can do so via Buy Me a Coffee and other platforms. You can find all the necessary links in the description. Until next time.